We're now joined by Adam Fisk to talk about his experience at Lourdes. Adam, great to have you with us. Thanks for taking the time.
Oh, absolutely. It's a pleasure to be here.
So this is a pretty amazing story. But before we get into the story itself, let me just ask you a little bit about your faith journey. So tell me how you and Morgan came to Lourdes in the first place, but a little bit about the background.
Yeah, absolutely. So I joined the Army active duty in 2012. Came engaged to my wife, Morgan, during that time. Went on my first deployment for a year to Korea. And we kind of stayed engaged during that time. Came back, got married. And around that time, that's when I wanted to kind of pursue my faith a little bit more. Again, I'd been raised in a Baptist church growing up, but kind of strayed away from it as I went into adulthood. Going through RCIA kind of renewed my desire to join the Catholic Church, and had my first communion and have been with the church ever since after RCIA was complete. That being said, we moved around through multiple bases across the country, and I ended up going back to South Korea a second time, and at that time we found out we were pregnant with our first child. We had 2 miscarriages up to that point, which was really hard for my wife and I to overcome. So we're really happy when Julian came into our life. It just so happened that it fell in line with the deployment. So I missed the entire pregnancy, so to speak, and actually got to come back early from that deployment by about a half a month. I arrived at 3 a.m. On a flight in the middle of the night. And then by 2 p.m. that day, so that within that day, she was induced. So I literally landed at the airport, went straight to the hospital at Fort Hood, and we were there delivering a baby. But essentially, his cord was wrapped around his body. He was not responsive. They decided to go from a traditional birth to an emergency C-section. He came out non-responsive, non-breathing for about 5 to 6 minutes. Very terrible time. Probably the worst moment in my life. It was absolutely terrifying. I've never felt more helpless. They quickly assessed they didn't have the equipment there that they needed to address his condition. They were able to resuscitate him and get him in like an incubated state. But he had, damage to his head, a very large hematoma. Mark Mitchell, my father-in-law, a deacon at Holy Spirit Church in Atlanta, flew in very quickly after realizing what had happened and brought water from Lourdes. He had been there on a pilgrimage before. Came, prayed over Julian, sprinkled some water on his head. We went to bed that night and came back the next morning, and it was almost completely absorbed, completely healed up.
So were you guys praying this whole time? What were you hoping for? How were you handling it at that moment?
I was praying, I think, nonstop throughout the entire event. Me and her were praying constantly. Prayed there with Mark as he was kind of praying over Julian with the Lord's water. At the time, I didn't fully understand what it was. I did not know much about Our Lady of Lourdes and the experience that happened in Lourdes, France, and the waters therein until afterwards. But you can be sure that I did my research very quickly afterwards, as I became a pretty firm believer in that water.
So then you decide at a certain point, you run into Warriors of Lourdes. How did you find Warriors to Lourdes? How did you find the program?
So definitely was researching Lourdes water. I didn't really quite know about the program yet, but father-in-law, being a very active Knight, I had found out about the program either through one of his peers. So for me, it kind of served 2 purposes. I wanted to bring Julian to the source. My wife was also diagnosed with lupus and was going through a lot of autoimmune health concerns. So it was kind of a twofold journey for us. And then I guess I should say 3. By the time we went to Lourdes, we had realized that we were pregnant with our second child, Tallulah. So it really was multiple reasons why we wanted to go.
Was there a moment in Lourdes I'm sure there were many, but is there one that sort of sticks out where you just go, this is the moment? In the video, you do that beautiful, you talk about your son playing in the water, and you sort of made all kinds of connections.
Yeah, there was a lot of moments like that. Probably too many to list out here, but I think that was probably the most significant to me. Morgan was feeling quite tired throughout the entire journey because of her illness and being pregnant and walking around and chasing this little less than 1-year-old. But no, we went to the fountains there along the river where you can essentially bottle and receive some of the water yourself. Seeing Julian kind of splashing around and playing in it, that was just like, it came full circle at that point, kind of the full realization. Like, I don't know if he would have even been in my life if it wasn't for that water and for that divinity that blessed upon us. So that kind of was, I had to take a moment to kind of like step away and process that. They also do submersion in the water, where you can go and you can almost get dunked into the water, and that was an incredible moment as well. Kind of feel alone in the universe for a moment as you're kind of in there. You feel protected and safe, even though when you feel almost going into it that you're vulnerable because you're in a public place, almost stripped down. But it was just a beautiful journey. And then being in the military still active, so I took leave to go on this trip. Seeing armies, military men from all across the world, all over Europe, from different continents, all converging at this place for this healing, this mental, physical, spiritual healing. Almost felt like we were all just one group of humans, not different countries, cultures, backgrounds. We were all there. People were incredibly friendly, kind. Kind of wish that the world could be like all the time, especially given circumstances in the world. We need more of that.